Okay, let's unpack this. Picture this scenario.
Mhm.
You've got a monk way up high on this, like, multi-story palace, and he's facing this really intense seduction attempt.
Right.
But then, miles and miles away, maybe in a forest grove somewhere, the Buddha sees the whole thing and somehow reaches out across that distance. I mean, what exactly unfolds here? It sounds incredible.
It really is. And that's the heart of the story we're diving into today, the account of Sundarasamuddathera. It's this really vivid narrative we get from the Dhammapada commentary.
Ah, the commentary.
Yeah, one of those ancient sources that gives us these very specific, sometimes, quite dramatic glimpses into the lives of people who actually encountered the Buddha's teachings.
Okay, so for this deep dive, our mission, if you like, is to pull out the key insights from this old story. What's it telling us today about maybe human weakness, temptation, and I guess the power of guidance, even when you feel totally cut off?
Well, it all kicks off with Sundarasamudda himself.
Hmm.
The commentary tells us he was born in just immense wealth back in Savatthi. His family had 40 koti.
40 Kodi. What does that even translate to? It sounds like a staggering amount of money.
It's almost unimaginable wealth, yeah. So he starts life with literally every material comfort you could think of.
But something obviously changed for him dramatically. The source says one day he'd finished eating, looked up, saw all these people heading towards Jetavana.
Right, carrying offerings, going to hear the Buddha speak.
And just out of sheer curiosity, he decided to follow them.
Exactly, he just tagged along. And that simple act, that curiosity, it changed everything for him. He sat there, probably at the edge of the crowd, and he heard the Buddha give what's called a graduated discourse.
Graduated discourse. What does that mean exactly? Like step by step?
Precisely. It's a teaching style that builds layer by layer. Starts with, maybe the benefits of giving, ethical living, then moves up towards the deeper stuff, suffering, the path to freedom, nirvana.
I see. So it's structured to sort of gently lead the listener deeper and deeper, and something in that message just clicked for him, resonated really strongly.
It did. It just became crystal clear to him, sitting right there, that the kind of pure life the Buddha was describing was totally incompatible with his life as a rich householder.
The contrast was just too stark.
Irreconcilable, yeah. He knew he couldn't live that way while staying at home.
So the huge decision, ordination. But giving up 40 Kodi, I mean, that can't be easy. And his parents, you mentioned, they weren't keen.
Understandably resistant, yes. The text actually says he had to put in a massive amount of effort to get their permission. It even compares his struggle to another disciple, Ratapala, who also faced big family opposition.
But he managed it?
He did. He persuaded them, went forth, received the initial ordination, and then the higher ordination, Upasampada, directly under the Buddha.
Okay, so you'd think after fighting so hard for it, he'd stick close to the Buddha, right? In Jetavana.
That's what you might expect. But the source says he had this thought, something like, what's the point of staying right here? He wanted a different kind of practice, maybe.
Interesting. So where did he go?
He decided to move. He left Savatthi and traveled all the way to Rajagaha. His plan was to live a more solitary life, just wandering for alms, relying only on what people offered each day.
Okay, so he's in Rajagaha, living the ascetic life. Meanwhile, back in Savatthi, paints quite a picture, doesn't it? His parents.
Oh, yeah. Imagine it's festival time, everything's lively and celebratory, and his parents see his old friends, enjoying themselves, living it up with all the splendor their son could have had.
Ouch.
The commentary really captures that poignancy. They're lamenting, basically. Look what our son gave up for that hard life.
And someone overhears this lament.
Yes. A courtesan in Savatthi heard their sorrow, asked what was wrong, and found out the whole story son ordained, gone off to Rajagaha, and she immediately saw an opportunity, a big one.
An opportunity.
She made them a proposition, a really bold one. She said, look, if you pay me well and promise to make me the mistress of your entire household,
Wow.
I will go to Rajagaha, find your son, and get him to disrobe. I'll bring him back to lay life.
That is audacious. Audacious doesn't even cover it. Did the parents actually agree to this?
They did. Desperate, I suppose. They paid her, and she set off for Rajagaha with, apparently, a large entourage. She was serious about this.
And she had a strategy, you said.
Oh, definitely. The text implies she was quite methodical. First, she staked out his alms route, found out exactly where he walked each day.
Okay. Reconnaissance.
Then, she rented a house right on that route. And when he came by on his alms round, she made sure to offer him particularly delicious, high-quality food.
Ah, the lure begins. Not with anything overt, but with something subtle, seemingly harmless, really good food offered politely.
Exactly. That's the starting point, just building that connection through the offerings.
So this is where the step-by-step trap really starts to unfold.
Precisely. Once he got used to accepting alms from her house, she escalated things just a bit. The commentary says she started asking him, Bhante, why not just sit here and eat the food? It's fresh.
Getting him to pause, to linger there.
Yes. And then came the next step, using kids. She apparently gave some children sweets or treats and told them to play right there on the veranda where he was eating, make noise, kick up dust.
Oh, that's clever. Make the current spot unpleasant.
Make it uncomfortable, exactly. So he'll look for an alternative. And she had the alternative ready.
Which was?
Ponte, it's so noisy and dusty out here with these children playing. Please, won't you come inside the house where it's quieter?
And he agreed.
He did. He went inside.
Okay, now he's inside the house. What's her next move to increase the pressure?
More noise. She got the kids, or maybe other kids, to start making a racket inside the house while he was trying to eat.
Seriously. So the veranda was noisy. Now the ground floor is noisy too. The strategy is becoming clearer.
Right. Make every option uncomfortable except the one she wants. And the next suggestion was the big one, the final step up.
Let me guess. Upstairs.
You got it. She said something like, Fonte, it's just impossible down here. The children are making such a din. You should really come upstairs. Up to the palace level. It's 7 stories high. It'll definitely be quiet up there.
A 7-story palace. She rented a place like that?
Apparently so. Or maybe it was part of the deal. The text specifies this grand setting. And remarkably, maybe worryingly, he agreed. He went with her up to the top level.
And the commentary gives a reason for why he kept agreeing.
Right.
Despite being, a dedicated monk.
It does, and it's a really crucial point. It notes that even though he was earnest in his practice, gathering alms, he was, and this is the phrase, bound by craving for taste. Rasattanhayabado.
Craving for taste. That's specific.
That's specific. It wasn't gross greed or lust initially. It was this subtle attachment, maybe to the pleasant sensation of eating, perhaps wanting a quiet, comfortable meal away from the dust and noise. That craving, that vulnerability was the hook.
Wow. It's kind of shocking, isn't it? He gave up 40 Koti, family status, presumably overcame huge desires, but it's the craving for taste, for maybe just a pleasant meal experience that makes him vulnerable here.
It really highlights how sneaky craving can be, doesn't it?
Right.
It finds the little cracks. It's not always the big, obvious stuff. Sometimes it's the subtle pull towards comfort, pleasant sensation. And this story uses that specific vulnerability, that rasatana, to show how it could be exploited.
Okay, so they're up there now, on the 7th story of this palace. What happens? The seduction becomes direct.
Oh, completely overt. Now that the gloves come off, the commentary says she performed what it calls woman's wiles. The Pali terms are ithikuta and ithalila. And get this, it says there are 40 different types of these wiles.
40? That's
Yeah.
incredibly specific. What kind of things are we talking about? Give us some examples from the source.
Yeah, the commentary actually lists quite a few things like strategically revealing and then concealing parts of her body, thighs, breasts, armpits, even her navel. And actions too. Dancing, singing, deliberately speaking in high or low tones, looking at him intently, making gestures with her hands and feet, playful actions, laughing. It even mentions things like wetting her lip with her tongue or raising an eyebrow suggestively.
Whoa, she is literally pulling out all the stops. A full-on performance designed to break his vows.
Absolutely. It was a calculated assault on his senses and his renunciation. And then, to hammer it home, she spoke directly to him, using a verse, almost like a little seductive poem.
What did she say?
Something along the lines of, look at my feet, reddened with lac dye. Look at my sandals. You're young, Bhante, and I'm young too. Let's enjoy this life together. We can become ascetics later, when we're old and need a walking stick.
Wow. Basically, life is for living now, religion is for when you're old and gray. That's quite the temptation, laying it all out there. How did the monk react in that instant?
The text says the effect on him was immediate and powerful, but maybe not in the way she hoped. He felt this profound sense of dismay, of savega, deep regret washed over him.
Regret, not desire.
Regret. He saw with total clarity the heavy deed, the gurukakama he was about to commit, abandoning his pure life, everything he'd worked for, all for this fleeting sensual pleasure. That moment on the palace roof became a moment of stark, terrifying realization for him.
Okay, so he's having this internal crisis, and this is the moment the Buddha intervenes. From hundreds of miles away.
This is where the story takes that extraordinary turn. The commentary explicitly states that right then, the Buddha, sitting way back in Jetavana near Savatthi, which it calculates as 45 yojanas away.
Which is roughly.
It depends on the yojana calculation, but maybe 300, 400, even 500 miles.
Eh.
A huge distance. He saw the entire scene, everything happening on that seventh floor in Rajagaha. And the text says, he smiled.
He smiled, and naturally, his attendant Ananda, who's always nearby, noticed.
As he always does. Ananda asked him, Lord, why are you smiling?
And the Buddha's explanation.
The Buddha told Ananda, right now there's a battle raging. Asamo, it's happening on the seventh floor of a palace in Rajagaha between the monk Sundarasamudda and a courtesan.
A battle! Wow, fought with temptation and inner struggle. So Ananda must have asked the obvious follow-up question.
Who's going to win? Exactly.
And the Buddha.
The Buddha declared it clearly. Sundarasamudda will win Ananda. The courtesan will be defeated. But he didn't just predict it. He actively participated in the victory.
How? From 400 miles away.
While still seated in Jetavana, the Buddha emanated this ray of light, like a radiant image of himself, and spoke a specific verse. A verse that traveled across that vast distance and entered the monk's hearing right there on the palace.
Incredible. What was the verse? What was the message he sent?
The verse essentially defined the highest spiritual attainment. It went something like, whoever in this world has abandoned both kinds of sensual pleasures.
Both kinds. Meaning?
Meaning the pleasures of worldly life, the householder life he left, and even the subtle attachments that can arise in the renunciant's simpler existence, goes forth houseless. That one whose sensual pleasures and the very seeds of future existence are exhausted him, I call a Brahmin, a true holy person.
So a powerful reminder of the ultimate goal, the complete freedom he was actually striving for, cutting through the immediate temptation.
Exactly. It refocused him instantly on the highest ideal.
And the impact on Sundarasamudda. Hearing these words, seemingly out of nowhere.
According to the source, the effect was instantaneous and transformative. The moment he heard that verse, he attained arahantship, full enlightenment. Right there.
Just like that, on the palace roof.
Just like that. And his departure from the scene was, well, equally spectacular. The text says, demonstrating his newfound liberation and psychic abilities.
Oh, this sounds good.
He rose straight up into the air right there on the palace, flew upwards and pushed right through the pinnacle, the very peak ornament, the Kanaka mandala of the seven-story building.
He went through the roof, literally.
Literally flew through the roof. Then, still in the air apparently, he offered praise to the Buddha, turned, and flew all the way back to Jetavana to pay homage in person.
That is quite an exit. Talk about leaving temptation behind. So, back at Jetavana, I imagine the other monks were talking about this.
Oh, absolutely. The buzz in the Dharma Hall was all about this incredible event. Monks discussing how Sundarasamudda had been on the very brink of being lost.
And they identified the cause.
They did. They specifically mentioned, according to the commentary, that it was the craving for taste knowable by the tongue that almost destroyed his mind. But, they concluded, the Buddha became his refuge, his ultimate protection.
And did the Buddha confirm this? Did he weigh in on their discussion?
He did. He came into the hall, asked what they were discussing, and confirmed their understanding. He said, yes, monks, I became his refuge. And then he added something intriguing, not just now, but in the past too. I served as a refuge for him when he was caught by this very same craving for taste.
In a past life, he connected it back.
Exactly. To illustrate this recurring pattern, this persistent vulnerability and the need for refuge, he recounted a Jataka story, one of the tales of his own previous lives.
Which Jataka story was it, do we know?
Yes, it was the Vadamiga Jataka. In that particular past life, the Buddha explained, Sundarasamudda had been born as a wild deer.
A deer.
A deer. And this deer was lured and eventually trapped by a park keeper who, in that life, was the man named Sanjaya. And how was the deer lured?
Let me guess. Craving for taste.
Precisely. Lured by some special food or bait. And the Buddha, in that lifetime, was serving as a wise minister to the king. He saw the deer trapped by its craving, spoke a verse about the situation, and his words led to the deer being released.
Wow. So the Dhammapada commentary story and this Jataka tale, they perfectly mirror each other. The core theme is identical.
Absolutely. The subtle, seemingly minor craving for taste, or perhaps we can broaden it to sensual pleasure, comfort, it's presented as this incredibly potent snare, capable of trapping even those who've made great strides.
And the constant is the Buddha's guidance, his teaching, his very presence, whether physically near or projected across miles or even across lifetimes, acting as the essential refuge, the way out.
It really underscores that some struggles are deep-seated, maybe recurring patterns. And that help, that refuge, can appear in the most unexpected ways, right when it's needed most, even when you feel utterly isolated in your struggle.
So, thinking about this ancient, really dramatic story, what does it mean for you listening to this today? Why should this tale from way back then still matter to us now?
Well, I think it's incredibly relevant, actually. It shows so vividly how easily these subtle temptations, maybe not grand passions, but small comforts, can creep in and lead us off track, even when we think we're committed, when we've made big changes or sacrifices.
Like Sundarasamudda giving up a fortune.
Exactly. He renounced incredible wealth, family ties, status, huge things, yet he was almost brought down by, what, a craving for a quiet, tasty meal. It really challenges you, doesn't it, to look at the small compromises you might be making.
Yeah, the subtle pulls towards comfort or convenience or just pleasant sensations, things we barely notice.
Right. And to recognize how those tiny things might be gently, subtly steering you away from your deeper intentions, your core values, whatever path you're trying to follow.
And this story also seems to put a spotlight on that moment of realization, that feeling Sundarasamudda had, that profound dismay, that regret when he saw where he was heading.
Yes. And crucially, for him, that moment wasn't the end. It wasn't failure. It was the turning point. That sharp pang of regret became the catalyst for his complete liberation. It woke him up.
So maybe regret isn't always just a negative thing to be pushed away.
Perhaps it can be a powerful signal, a signpost showing you've wandered off your path and need to correct course. And the story also really hammers home the importance of having some kind of refuge, doesn't it? Something to anchor you, something stronger than the immediate pull of craving.
Whether that's like spiritual teachings or maybe your own ethical code or supportive friends, community.
Or even just that sudden moment of inner clarity, like the Buddha's verse provided for him, reminding you of your bigger purpose. And sometimes, as the story shows, that guidance or strength can feel like it comes out of the blue, from far away, exactly when you're most vulnerable.
So this story of Sundarasamuddathera, it's way more than just some old legend, isn't it? It's this really powerful, almost startling look at how persistent and insidious craving can be.
Finding the smallest opening, the tiniest vulnerability in his case, specifically craving for taste, and using it to lead someone right to the edge of abandoning everything they stand for.
But it also shows, maybe hopefully, how that moment of near disaster, that feeling of, oh no, what am I doing? Or when it's combined with that deep regret and connected to some kind of powerful guidance, that can actually become the trigger for profound change, even ultimate freedom.
It really does leave you with something to think about personally.
Yeah.
How aware are you really of the subtle cravings playing out in your own life? Maybe it's not taste, maybe it's craving for comfort or ease or needing approval or just scrolling for distraction. And how might those quiet background cravings be influencing your choices day to day? Nudging you, maybe just slightly, away from what you truly value or intend, almost without you noticing.
And maybe, flipping it around, if you have had one of those moments, that jolt of regret, that realization like, whoa, I almost went too far down a road I didn't mean to take, could that feeling, instead of being something to beat yourself up about, actually be the powerful turning point you need? Just like it was for Sundarasamudda standing on that seven-story palace.